Well, welcome back, guys. It's my third person I'm having this conversation with. This is Dudley. Don and I are friends. I like to consider him brother, client, just overall. But he's I think the common denominator we have is that we care so much about people. And Don constantly is utilizing his platform in his store in Footlocker, Detroit, and he's always giving back to the community. And he does a lot of work on his own as well, but the common denominator is he's always looking out for other people. So I deem you to be a leader, Don, and I really appreciate you for giving me this time. And today my job is to listen, like I articulated earlier. So this episode is about you. It's about how you feel as a black man, and so that we can gain his perspective, gain his wisdom, and take that and pass it down to our kids, so that our future generation doesn't have to deal with crap like this that's going on in the world today. So Don, let's get to it, man. Like today, it's been about a week or a week or so since George Floyd has died. And you've been to a couple protests right now, but how do you feel today?
Every day is a little bit different. Today, some days you wake up and you're fine, more or less, then that changes quickly to being disappointed, to being angry, to being confused. To be honest with you, it's a range of emotions, I feel like the best way to describe it really is like a depression, like a shared depression, amongst myself and people like in our community, that influx of different just feelings kind of just manifest in all those different feelings, so today I'm feeling fine, kind of thing, but I might go on social media in the next 10 minutes or so and see something that's triggering all over again, kind of thing. So it's a really confusing feeling, but it also is a really driving feeling for certain people like myself who just, who do take pride in, spending so much time with our communities, giving back to our communities, that it's like, there's just compelling nature to do something or say something, even if you don't know exactly what that is. You just know you want to take some sort of, action to make yourself and make others feel seen, feel heard, feel better, So it's confusing, it's anger, it's depressing, it's just all of those things, like in one.
I can hear it in your voice that your emotion is there. And for you personally, how old are you now?
29.
29 years old, and you've been alive for 29, and I'm sure that you felt different stages of racism or oppression, or just feeling like you're an outcast in different
absolutely.
stages of your life. Have they gotten better throughout the years, or have they gotten worse? Where do you see?
I mean, like I'm from Detroit, raised on the west side. I went to Detroit public schools, so largely I've been around black people most of my life. But you still go out into the world and events, places, restaurants, school sometimes. I went to college at Wayne State for some time. I went to college at Western for some time. And you're around different cultures and people, and police officers pulling you over. There's moments in your life where you experience like racism at different levels. And I would say for me that I don't think that it has gotten any better. I'm still on edge, if a police officer is behind me, if I get pulled over, even if I'm not particularly doing anything wrong, just being out sometimes. You visit certain cities that border Detroit, kind of thing, certain suburbs that might only be separated by a street or a couple blocks, and you can like feel the tension is different when you're like there. I think what I've learned from it though is how I personally react to it. Like you get it in the workplace, you get in those environments, and it's unfortunate, but I would say on your end, it's kind of like how you choose to give attention to it sometimes. I think that, sometimes racism just manifests in different ways. Not all of them are like in your face, not all of them are blatant, but I think that being 29, growing, getting older and experiencing those things, I'm not as confused by it as I might have been when I was younger, where I just didn't understand why, kind of thing. And I'm fortunate to have parents who talk to me about those things, explain those things before I was out into the world. But it's still one of those things that when you're younger, you might know to look out for it, but you still don't understand like if I didn't do anything, why are these people looking at me a certain way or acting a certain way, you know, kind of thing. So like I don't think that racism has changed during my lifetime. I think just like how myself and maybe others deal with it, you know, or react to it, you know, has changed over time. And I think it's really just acknowledging it, acknowledging what you can do about it, you know, being a voice for it, but then also like breaking down those barriers and get into those spaces so that we're not the only black kid in class anymore, or we're not the only black person in your office anymore, and opening those doors for people who coming behind us or like trying to get in there as well, so we can, you know, create a workplace and create like a culture and environment where hopefully is going one day, you know what I'm saying, but at least it can be a more level playing ground for like people when it's us in positions to make decisions and hire people and bring people on in different ways. So no, I don't think it has changed a lot, but I do think that we've found some creative ways to react to it.
You mentioned evening out the playing field, right? And that's the issue here, correct? Is that Mr. Floyd was killed and murdered in plain sight, the whole world to see it. Now, if anybody, a regular civilian, but especially a black person, if you were in the vicinity, or if your friend murdered somebody, you will be guilty until proven innocent. And a lot of times that happens. And a lot of people are wrongly convicted, and because they come from a less income household or background, they can't afford the representation to defend themselves. And because they couldn't prove themselves innocent, you got a lot of wrongfully convicted felons in jail today.
Facts, yeah.
Now, whereas a police officer murders a person, they are innocent until proven guilty. And not a lot of people talk about this, but I guess there was a case that took place in the same city in Minneapolis where something that happened to George Floyd happened prior to.
Yeah.
That time, like a couple weeks ago or a couple months ago, I forgot what the timeline was, but basically they didn't have any video footage like the George Floyd one. So these cops were innocent and free, and they never reopened that case.
Yeah.
So, but now, so that's the change that we're looking for, right? Is that people are held accountable just equally.
Yeah, facts. And I feel like, you know, it would be foolish of me to sit here and act like I know exactly what we should do. I know exactly the answer to fix this, right? But what you're saying is super true, right? And that's one of the things that's really scary about it, is that it's like, as many times that we have seen this over and over, you know, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, they're just some of the newer cases in hundreds and hundreds of deaths that have happened from police brutality over the years. And those are just the ones that we know of because there was video or somebody had a phone available to record it. Those are just the ones that we saw. You know, like what you're saying, for example, like there's so many out there that we can consider have happened that we just don't have evidence or video footage of, so we don't know. Like people in that community might know, people who are there might know, but it's not as widespread, so we don't know. There's so many more that could and probably are out there, which is incredibly unfortunate. What I find really troubling about that, though, is that the main officer, well, ex-officer who was charged, I forget his name, Davenar or something like that. He actually had, I think it was 18 complaints against him prior to any of this with internal affairs. And some of the other officers involved also had lawsuits, also had excessive force complaints against them as well. So it's not like this was an out the blue one-off situation or something like that. These are people who were already in the system, who have record of like these offenses, of these complaints. And for some reason, they're still out there. I don't know any other job where you can have 18 complaints against you and keep your job. You know, especially when your job is very literally to serve and protect. How can you have 18 complaints, right, you know, and then you're still out here, you know, doing the same shit? Like, that doesn't make sense to me, you know. And I'm not a police officer. I've never went through that process. I don't know how frequently they have reviews or things like that. But I feel like if we were, or if someone, that speaks to the system that they're in as well. It's just like, how can you have an employee, or someone on your staff that is behaving in this manner consistently, and no action is taken against them?
Right.
In that way. It's like, I wholeheartedly believe, like, every time this happens, the next couple of days, every time a black person is murdered by the police, the next couple of days, the next week, something comes out about that officer. It's never just like, oh, they were squeaky clean the whole time. It's always like, oh, look at this Facebook picture of them, and not even a MAGA hat. It literally said, "Make whites great again," his hat. Then you dig deeper and see that they have all these complaints against them, all these charges against them. And it makes me think, like, okay, so if we were reviewing their performance regularly, or actually just taking serious, what's going on, this could have been prevented. Yeah. Like the 18 complaints he have, it sounds like they lived to complain about it. They lived through it to say that, you know what I'm saying? But because nothing was done about it, that person ended up killing someone, ended up killing George Floyd, kind of thing. So it's like, why wouldn't we take that serious when we're seeing that, kind of thing? And if it's not being done on a consistent basis, if we're not looking at their action and their activities and their social media, if we're not looking at that regularly, why not? You know what I'm saying? That's a very clear indicator of their behavior. So like that's really, when we find out these things, it's never really surprising anymore. It's just disappointing.
So Don, as I mentioned earlier, I deem you to be a leader, and coincidentally, before all of this happened, I made a video about leadership, about you.
Thank you, yeah.
And here we are sitting here talking about leadership and lack thereof in today's society. It really does start with the top, but you don't really see empathy, you don't really see accountability, you don't really see somebody putting somebody else in front of themselves. And I take issue to that, and I take pride in what leadership is. But in order to exercise leadership, I think we as a society need to redefine what that is. And like I said in the video, it's not about, okay, here's what I'm going to do, and everybody else better give it the program. But it's about hearing people out, having empathy, giving back, giving the people the voice. But in your mind, you do a lot of action, leadership action. In your mind, what is your definition of a leader?
Yeah, so I completely agree with you, and what you said in the voiceover of that video. Thank you again for that. And I think in our society right now, we look to the wrong people for leadership. We associate leadership with popularity, with follower count, with platform. And I do think there's a responsibility with having a platform, but I don't think that makes you a leader. But I think that I don't think leaders necessarily choose to be leader. I think that people choose them. I think that there's something about you that people see in you and they want to follow, or they want to like be guided by, not necessarily like blindly follow, but it's just like you have an innate quality about you that people are like, you know what, I see what they do, I believe in what they're saying, I believe in their actions, and this is a person I'm comfortable in and confident in, following, and I'm confident in the results that they're saying that they want to see and want to make, So I think as a leader, it takes you understanding that whether you have 10 followers or 10,000, people are watching you. People are watching what you do. They're watching your actions. And I think that is really, cliche, but like you lead by example. It's one thing to say like, this is what we need to or should be doing, when you're not practicing it, yourself, if you're not out there doing the thing, and understanding that everybody doesn't, I think that in social media, there's just such a way of really kind of funneled speaking, where it's like, you need to be doing this, you need to be doing that. If you want this, then you got to do that,
Right.
Like, you don't like your job, just quit it. That's what this person did, and it's very dismissive of people's situations, where they are in their lives and what they're doing, so whenever I post things like that, I'm never like, why aren't you here doing this if you want change? I'm like, yo, like you can create change, you can be an action person in many different ways. You know what I'm saying? You have to find what you're comfortable with, what makes the most sense for you, and what you actually believe in supporting. So it's not a one-off situation. It won't be like, oh, I showed up for this thing today, but I don't take any other action after that. You know what I'm saying? It's like, what makes sense for you, kind of thing. And I think that it takes, I had a friend hit me up, and he was asking me about, kind of similar situations and questions about what's going on. And one of his questions was kind of like, what do you think we should be doing overall, like, as a black community, not just today, right now with this situation, but like kind of like long term. And my answer to that was more so like, I don't think any one person is the super human person that can just change all of these things in like one sweep motion, right? I think that it's like identifying what your role can be in that larger picture, kind of thing. So if it's like, like you're a graphic designer, you know what I'm saying, and you're an entrepreneur doing it on your own, that's a skill that you can teach a community that needs upward mobility. If like you're a photographer and you want to use like your skills as a photographer and videographer to amplify the voices of people around you who are, doing those things. You know what I'm saying? That's you playing your part in your role. Right. That's fixing and, upscaling to a larger picture and a larger problem. So it's like, it's not necessarily, for me, there's no, like, we need this one leader who's going to do it all. It's just like, many of us are leaders in our own way, and it's just finding your way of being a leader. It's finding like what works for you, you know what I'm saying, what your area, your skill of expertise is, and how you can use that to just help amplify the voice of the people and the problems that are out here.
I love that you say that because the term serving, right? In today's society, it's deemed as something that is like weak or like, oh, like I'm better than that, and I don't mean serving just as, as a waiter or a waitress, but like I'm talking about like doing something for other people. Yeah. And like you said, you create, you figure out what your value is, because we all have something special that we bring to the table, whether it's skill set with our hands or, with our minds or, with our ears or, the way we convey or, we all have some sort of skill that we can utilize to make somebody else happy. Yeah. And John F. Kennedy said, it's not about what the country can do for you, but it's what you can do for the country. And a lot of people heard that speech. Half of the people probably looked at that and it's like, what the heck, man? Like, what do you mean what I can do for the country? What's the country going to do for me? But the other people will listen to that and say, he's right. It's not about him, me. Yeah. It's about all of us. We need to do this together. Yeah. And I think that empowerment is what you're talking about. And you really do a good job of that.
Thank you.
Through all of the projects that you do.
Yeah. And I think that there's a similar quote that I like as well, and it goes, I can't remember where it's from, but it's stuck with me over the years. And essentially it's, imagine what would get accomplished if no one cared who got the credit. And to me that always just meant like, because, social media is so social, and again, it's an amazing platform for you to amplify things. But I think sometimes people are so caught up in how they want to be seen and what things can do to their aesthetic or their brand that they sometimes they might do the right things for the wrong reasons. Sometimes they might not do anything at all for their own reasons, kind of thing. And sometimes they just want to jump on the bandwagon of like, oh look, I'm giving back or I'm doing this thing. And that's like, I'm personally just a person who's enjoyed being in the background and just like supporting how I can. And it's afforded me more opportunities to do that because people start to seek you out because they're like, they see the work, you know what I'm saying? They see the interest, they see the care, kind of thing. So when it comes to serving, I think that is realizing that it's a community that you're serving, that you're a part of. So like helping others is helping you, whether that's building a community or a marketplace for a particular industry, because Detroit is a place that we have a lot of creatives and a lot of entrepreneurs, so we don't have a lot of industry. So people don't always look to our city for certain things as often as they would others, and same thing, our communities don't get as much service because of that. We don't have as many people all the time. We have some great organizations and some great leaders here, but I think that being in a position to serve them, you know, the people who are already out doing the work, and just bringing them up, you know, giving them more of a platform. It's a beautiful thing to serve, you know, because it actually is going to come back to you because you're part of the community.
You just mentioned uplifting others, right? So a lot of times, you know, I think it's due to social media, and statuses are so important now, right? Like, everybody treats people based on what their job title is, how much money that they're making, what kind of car they drive, and what kind of house they live in. This is the standard that we just created as a country, and it's horrible and it's killing us. That's why people are depressed, because they feel like they're never reaching a level that satisfies them, because there's always somebody else that's doing more and doing better.
Yeah.
So, but, you know, so what ends up happening is that people denigrate others to uplift themselves, because they're so insecure about what within themselves.
Yeah.
But in reality, the only way you uplift yourself is by uplifting others. Now, if there was a pen on the ground, right, and it's rock bottom, it's all the way at the bottom, if I pick that pen up and I reach as high as I can, and I get on my tippy toes and I try to uplift it as high as I can, you look at yourself, you're just uplifting yourself. So God's proving it physically, right? He's trying to show us that the answer to uplift yourself is by uplifting others. So I firmly agree with you when you say that, Don. And in your case, tell me about a situation or a story. You know, I know that there's a lot.
Yeah.
But is there a story that really sticks out to you where you felt uplifted after you uplifted somebody else?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it happens often, you know. I feel like, and I always take those as wins, no matter whether it's just somebody, you know, texting me and saying like, yo, thank you, I appreciated this, or whether it's a social media shout out, whatever it is, I always appreciate the acknowledgement. But, you know, I think, you know, just one of the main things is I actually curated, while we're, you know, talking about all of this, I co-curated an art show, an art exhibit, I want to say 2 years ago now. It was called Black ID, which was short for Black Identity, and I did that with my partner Laura Gibson. And it was an art exhibition that just featured all Black artists from Detroit. This was at a time where we just were not getting as much love and resources and things like that. A lot of artists were being brought in from outside the city for different projects and things. So we wanted to do something to kind of just amplify the talent that was here, you know, give them a space, you know. So we hosted it at the gallery, the Car Center, which was in Harmony Park, downtown Detroit. And, you know, we had over 50 artists. We had over 2 floors of artwork pieces. We had performances. It was a great night. Our opening night was amazing. We did it at the beginning of Black History Month. And we just didn't have like our opening night, then the show's up, and there's like a closing. We had activities each week. So one week was like a kids day where kids could come in and learn just basic art skills from one of the artists that was in the show. Another one was like a film night showing local movies from like local directors. You know, just finding ways to like kind of speak to everyone. One was a poetry night, you know, all of these things, you know. And you know, at first there was like kind of like a, you know, do you think youth, millennial age kind of will come out for things like that? They didn't think that we had such a taste, you know, for art and culture, like in that way. They thought it would be a disconnect, you know. But our opening night, we had over 500 people come, younger, older generation, different walks of life, different interests, all there to see the same thing, you know. And while we were doing that show, people were DMing me or messaging me just like, I'm just so happy that something like this exists. You know, some of the artists, it was their first time being in the show at all. Right. You know, and they're in this gallery that, you know, that's being covered by us in Black Detroit Magazine and Metro Times. They're just grateful, like, yo, you didn't have to put me in the show. You know, some of them are actually selling artwork as well, you know, so they're actually making money too, you know, kind of thing. So it was one of those things where, you know, people were coming back and just saying like, yo, like, thank you for providing this as a platform, you know. And I wasn't at that time thinking about what it was going to do for me afterwards. Right. But since then, it's just like, well, that's part of my portfolio of work, you know. Right. Then that afforded me interviews and different features and things like that did end up amplifying like who I am. Right. And what I'm doing too, you know what I'm saying? But just for me wanting to create you know, a space and an opportunity for these people who I felt needed it, you know, kind of thing. So uplifting others, I promise will always come back, you know, it'll always come back to you.
And that's very encouraging to hear, because a lot of people, you know, and rightfully so, right? And when they're in the neighborhoods where not a lot is going on, they feel like that there isn't any opportunity out there, or at least they want that opportunity, but they don't know where to look. But I think you just gave a key answer, which is look to serve others, and that will come back to you.
Yeah.
And whether that's in a resume form, like you just mentioned, but I'm sure it came back in fulfillment. I'm sure it came back with like more positive juju came back to you, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Like
Yeah.
that type of energy really does exist.
Yeah, your network grows, all of that. And even then, like, Detroit is such an interesting place because it's always been very innovative, very creative, and we've always had talent here. You know, it's just one of those things, like I said, like it's not always acknowledged, or sometimes it is acknowledged and taken advantage of.
Yeah.
You know, and when we talk about opportunity, when I graduated high school was 2009, and I went to Cass Tech. Shout out to the technicians. And you know, at that time, a lot of us left. A lot of people went to school elsewhere because they had to. You know, they didn't see opportunity here. And we're not wrong. It's like if you wanted to work in a certain industry or get a certain education from a certain school, there was not that much here. And then there definitely was not a lot of jobs here. There's not that much now compared to other places, you know. And I will say that is, you know, you have to do what's best for your situation, and, you know, make sure that you're forward thinking in your education, your career, and things like that. But I really believe that they call that a brain drain, like when, you know, all the creatives and, you know, doers leave a place, they take their talent somewhere else.
Yeah.
Whether it's through necessity or want, whatever, you know. But what happens is that place that they leave, nothing is changing there. You know what I'm saying? And then inevitably people from outside the city come and then they do it, you know, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And not saying that we have the same power or the same like resources, but we do have the opportunity to create our own spaces, create our own opportunities, you know, within our cultures and within our things. You know, I think, you know, I've been fortunate to use some of my platforms to create those opportunities for others. But early on, I was renting art galleries, Baltimore Gallery, or, you know, renting a sneaker boutique to have my events in that was kind of like themed the same way as what I do now, like with Footlocker. It just was in a different space, a smaller space, you know, and it was like I didn't have anyone giving me a budget to do these things or execute these things. I had to do it on my own. I created opportunity for myself to create opportunities for others. Right. So sometimes it's just looking at being innovative and looking at what you can do with what you have, you know, and then growing it. You really don't know where it can take you, you know, but when you're doing it for good reasons, I truly believe that good will come back to you.
Next one, just to piggyback off of what you just said, you kind of answered this question in that answer, mm-hmm. But like we mentioned, and as the world is showing, black people have been oppressed. They've been enslaved for 300 years prior, but they've been oppressed for 100 years. And as a black man, I'm sure that you constantly felt and still feel that you're behind the 8 ball, and that you may be running the same race, but you're running an uphill battle. You're not done yet, obviously, you're still young, but you've overcame a lot of obstacles, and I'm sure it took a lot of courage and motivation. To any kids that are out there, black kids, who want to create their own lane and path, but they may just be waiting for that oomph of motivation. What is it that motivates you? What is it that pushes you through so that you continue to just keep punching these obstacles down and just continue to pave the way for yourself and the people around you? Yeah.
So I've always thought about it as I'm actually really hard on black people. I'm really hard on my culture in a way, not in a negative way, but on a like, I push them and try to motivate them as much as possible, like my friends, the people in my circle. And I think that if you know that you're starting a race behind, you know, the starting line's here, but you have to start back here, you know you have to go harder. You know it's off top. And while there's a lot of us working to get us closer to that starting line, we're just not there yet. So in the meantime, you have to do everything possible to make up for that space. You know, so for me, it was going into situations knowing that. So it was finding opportunities to make myself stand out. It's finding opportunities to do work, to create my own work. You know, if you're not getting those opportunities to build a portfolio or get a job or do those things, it's like, well, start creating your own work. Make mock examples, you know, kind of thing like that. Go find those opportunities. Go find internships. Go find mentors. You know, like you really have to do as much as you can on your own, unfortunately, sometimes, you know. But I think like people will see that drive because people are more willing to work with people who are working for themselves or are building themselves up, you know. So I think like going into the situations and knowing, you know, that you have to go harder was a big motivation factor for me because I knew I couldn't just, oh, I'll just go to school and graduate and get a job, and the normal, you know, like trajectory was not gonna work for me. You know, if like you think about school or college, like whatever you major in, there's 1,000 other kids graduating with the same degree as you at the same time as you every semester, every year. You know, so what's making you stand out? What's making you stand apart? You know, but I'll also say it's like to the youth, like to kids, it's like I honestly think that we go to college far too early, like too young. I think you don't have enough view of like the world yet, you know. And I think when you go to college, it's like, all right, pick a major, study that for 4 years, and then go figure out what you're gonna do for like the rest of your life, basically. And I think like, how old are you when you graduate high school? Like 18, 17, 18?
Right.
You're asking a teenager what they want to do for the rest of their life, who may not have seen much of the world to even know that yet, right?
I didn't have the answers.
So, you know, I really think that there needs to be more time, and I don't see schools particularly adopting that, but I think that parents and even take it upon yourself to just kind of research the things that you like, because there's usually some type of career path or job behind it. I like sneakers. I started to look at career opportunities in the sneaker market, and a lot of them are new. Like social media managing wasn't a thing 5 years ago for real in that way, you know, so neither was social media marketing or these different things that are available now. And a lot of those things came out of necessity as, you know, how we communicated changed, you know, and things like that. So it's really just, if you're interested in sports, there's sports marketing, for example. There's these other jobs kind of behind the scenes that you might not know exist, you know, especially kids, you know, growing up in the hood, they only seen the same couple things. It's like, you know, sports, doctor, engineer, work at a plant, you know, here in Detroit, that's a big thing, you know, and like get your bread, you know, kind of thing, because I don't think school is for everybody. I believe education is, but I don't think school is. But you have to find like what you're passionate about and let that lead you. And I think that motivation will come from that because you're excited. It's easier for you to work in a space that you're excited about. It's easier for you to build in a space when you're passionate about something. So it's like, start with the things that you like, start with the things that you love, and then just start doing your own research. But definitely understand that you're unfortunately going to be starting, you know, behind that starting line, you know, but do all you can to catch up to that and then pass that. You know, because once you pass that, now you can bring other people on. You know what I'm saying? You can open that door for people behind you. And each generation, we're going to get closer and closer to that.
Yeah. And if you are doing something that you don't like, you know, that's just as productive as doing something or finding something that you do like. Because if you know that you don't like something, then, you know, that really motivates you to really find, you know, your own lane too, you know?
Yep, yeah, for sure. And I feel like you have to like I said, it's an inward journey. Like you have to, like when I say like find what you're passionate about, it's like really like, you know, think about the things that you truly enjoy, you know, the things that you really like, the culture that you really like, whatever that is. And, you know, if there's not currently a career path for it, you might be the person who makes it a thing. You know, like you don't always have to think inside of what's available to you. You know, sometimes you have to create those opportunities, you know, and I think that, you know, Black culture is a culture of resistance and resilience, you know, so I think if anybody can do that, it's us. You know, we're the blueprint for a lot of things like music, sports, art, you know, like we have such a footprint in all of those things, but we are rarely in positions where we're influencing the corporate aspect of them or the big dollars and the things behind them. And that's something that needs to change as well, you know, but it all starts with us entering those spaces and knocking down those barriers.
One thing that you touched that I've been asking, you know, I asked JD and I asked Lomas, I'm going to continue to ask this question. One of the biggest leadership roles that we play as human beings is our role as parents. And the reason why I wanted to have this interview with Don and everybody else is so that whatever wisdom, and he's given us a lot of wisdom right now, a lot of perspective, I want to take this and I want to pass it down to my kids, right? And make sure that they're enlightened, make sure that they're educated, and they understand Don's wisdom and perspective so that the future generation doesn't even have to deal with BS like this. I want to get to a point where we all look at one another as one race, the human race. And I was explaining this to Don, but you know, I remember moving here from Japan and being a half Japanese, half American guy, I was always asked, what are you? What are you? Could you imagine a human being asking, what are you? You know, and it used to upset me a lot, and I used to answer, I'm a human being, and they're like, oh no, I meant like ethnicity. But it used to upset me.
Yeah.
And parents, you know, or you know, other teachers will tell me, you know, you need to feel this way, you need to feel that way, and or you know, you need to ignore that. But I didn't like people telling me how I felt or how I should act because they don't know what it's like to be a multicultural person. And so while all of this stuff is going on, the reason why I wanted to listen to Don is because I don't know what's going on in his mind, but I can listen and I can try to know, and that's what this interview is for.
Yeah.
So the next question I wanted to ask you, Don, is that black parents and white parents, right? Just parents in general. What do they need to teach and pass down to their kids so that we don't have to see racism in the future? What do you think is an information or a parental strategy that kids need, or that the parents need to give to their kids so that we can have a brighter future?
No, so in my opinion, I think that there needs to be more acknowledgement of our differences. And that doesn't mean us being pushed back or separate or it's weird, I can't, you know, but understanding that it's like, it's kind of like when people say like, I don't see color, right? It's like, well, we are different colors and there's nothing wrong with that. But it is something that acknowledges that we may have some differences in our culture and our upbringing, and there's nothing wrong with acknowledging it. I think we should welcome that and educate our kids that, yo, like just because someone is a certain color or from a certain place does not mean they are a certain way. You should treat them with respect, how you want to be treated. My parents always told me treat people the way you want to be treated, right? And I think from there you're not going into things with so much bias that you're unwilling to unlearn those things, you know. So if it's like, okay, like you go to, and a lot of times because of, you know, systemic racism, that's a whole thing, but we often grow up around people who look like us, you know, kind of thing. So we often don't have that much of face time with other races outside of, unfortunately, sometimes just negative situations. So we see news and media, and then when we finally interact with them in the outside world, you know. So I think that it's acknowledging that we're different, but we are still part of like the same race. We're still all people, you know, and that we can all be together. We can all be united, you know, kind of thing. It's going to be things that your culture does and we can respect that. It's going to be things that my culture does and we can respect that. And it's completely fine. It's okay, you know. So I really think like just accepting that we're different, but acknowledging those differences and also acknowledging that we're not that different. We still have our own beliefs in our neighborhoods and, you know, the things that we do. But I think as far as like particular to black parents, and it's tough because I feel like you can't teach what you don't know, right? So I think that there needs to be a lot more education on just finances, politics, history, and just, you know, just social issues within the household. You know, I think that school kind of touches on like what they consider the major points. Like you'll hear about Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, and that might just be a section of your history class at some point, but you might not hear about all the things in between and after and before, and even just more current things, you know. And but you know, but just understanding that it's like the world is constantly evolving, it's constantly changing. So the world that we're growing up in is going to be somewhat different than the world that our children grow up in. Just like our world is different than the world our parents grew up in. You know, not just through technology and things like that, but literally like society is different. How we communicate is different. You know, like you talked about earlier with social media playing such a huge role in things. That wasn't a thing X amount of years ago. You know, so I think like there's a lot. Parenting is not an easy job. But I think like kids are smarter than what we give them credit for, and I think that sitting them down and having honest conversations. You're still talking to a kid, but having honest conversations about what's going on, because they're soaking in everything. The same stuff that we watching, they're watching. The same thing we're seeing. A lot of kids have phones and social media now. We're all seeing the same things. You know what I'm saying? Like, but what you can do is help them to process that information. So I think it's really just, like I said, teaching them that we are different and it's okay. And that we still have similarities as people, and that, like I said, like the world is constantly evolving and constantly changing, and just giving them like the tools and the resources to go out there and make the best decisions that they can. I don't want to be pessimistic and say like I don't think there will ever not be racism. I think that racism is a very deeply rooted belief that people are spreading and teaching and sharing, and that's why it's so ingrained into our society. Again, like I said, it's not always in your face, kind of thing. It's in applying for loans, it's in buying homes, it's in schools, it's in education. It's very ingrained into our society because it's been around for so long, right. So I think that, but teaching our youth about that, and so that they understand when that's happening, teaching them about privilege that that they may have on their own, or privilege that races that they might interact with will have, so that they understand what's going on and just have a better understanding, so they're not just confused, angry, and then reacting in negative ways. It's like educating them. It's really all about communicating and educating with the youth, and making sure that they're, like I said, equipped to make the best decisions that they can.
2 more questions, okay?
Yeah.
One, obviously you mentioned that you went to a couple protests.
Yeah.
When you were marching and you looked around you, you didn't just see black folks around you. You saw...
There's more white people than black people. Everyone that I've been to.
There's more white people
here in
than
Detroit.
black people.
Yeah.
How does that make you feel as a black man?
So, like I said earlier, I don't think anyone has to particularly march or protest to support something. I do think that if you want to see change, it requires action, like something you have to act on in some way. So, no, you don't have to come out and march. You know what I'm saying? Maybe you're at home signing petitions online or emailing online. It can manifest in many ways. Maybe you're working on a strategy to do something else, but if you're just sitting back and watching and complaining and not taking any sort of action, that I have a problem with. So when I go out there and I see, 9 people of color fighting for, issues that are largely, ours, one, I think is dope to see, that there is support from others. You know what I'm saying? That there are people who are like, yo, like you're saying, like, I don't know what it's like, but I can sympathize, I can support, I can be there to help amplify the voice. And that's how I see it. But I do think that the response that I've been getting is I didn't see it or I didn't know about it. When it's the next one, and it's a little disappointing because it's like, if we weren't in pandemic times, I'm sure you can find a flyer for a party or some other shit you want to go to, but this conveniently flew under the radar, So I'm not saying everybody's like that, but when I went to the first one, I heard about it from a friend, right? After that, I was like, well, is there going to be more? I took it upon myself to look into it and research it, because what I realized is like the people organizing these protests aren't influencers. They don't got 100,000 followers. They're activists all the time, not just right now. So their pages might have a couple hundred followers. They might be more on Facebook or whatever. So I went through, I did my research. I found newspaper articles about them. Oh, these are the organizations who have been planning this. Then I went and found those organizations and those people, and I looked at, hey guys, we're here. And then oftentimes, like, when I went to the rally yesterday, 2 days ago, I'm sorry, the organizer of that protest, he got arrested that night. He wasn't out to make social media posts because he was really with the shits. And I'm not saying like, oh, you're not protesting right if you don't get arrested. But I'm saying like, like if you are really adamant about going out and supporting those things, you have to seek them out. Kind of thing. It's not one of those things where everybody's sharing it, because it's like we talked about earlier, people's, how they regard social media. So, but I do think that like there needs to be more support. I've looked at the news and you'll see France and other countries, you know, and other states that are like boiling over with support for something that's happening here. Not that there's not racism in other countries, but they're outraged about something that happened in our country to someone of our race, you know, and it's like in Detroit, one of the largest cities of black population historically. You know, it is disappointing sometimes to not see that support come out, you know, but I take that upon our conversation about leadership as well, and what our leaders are directing these people to do, you know. And also, like, honestly, sometimes I think about, like, fuck, what can I do? You know what I'm saying, to get more people out, because there's a lot of people out, but there should be more. And then I'm thinking through it, because I work in marketing, so my mind is just like, okay, well, they need more of a PR team that's actually amplifying their message, because these are like just literally grassroots being led by the people kind of thing. Right. They're not as savvy as to getting this stuff out, so they're getting the same people out all the time, you know. So sometimes I'm thinking like that too, like, oh, if we did partner with a really dope influencer and can get more people aware of it and get more people out, we can take this from 500 people to 1,000 people to, you know, this kind of thing. But I think it takes a want. I think it takes a need, you know. Like, I had a bunch of comments on one of my posts about protesting, but only one of them asked, is there another one coming up? Is there one this weekend that I could attend? You know what I'm saying? Where do I find? Only one person asked me that out of all however fucking many comments, you know, kind of thing. So it's the interest level as well. I feel like you find what you're looking for. But I would personally like to see more support from our community, and just stepping up more, you know, if you really want to see these things. And if you don't know how, educate yourself, look it up, you know. Don't be ashamed to not know how, you know what I'm saying. Like, read it, you know what I'm saying. Like, read, find out, research it, you know what I'm saying. Follow pages other than local influencers, and then figure out what the best way for you to support is, you know.
Last question, but before I ask the last question,
yeah.
John, I just wanted to acknowledge you, man. I acknowledge you for always doing what's right, but you mentioned within this interview, and this has been your narrative, but you're a people's person. You look at kindness, you know, and you don't judge somebody based on their title of their work, or, you know, how much money they drive or have, or what kind of car they drive. But you truly are somebody that has the ability to empower others. And for me, you know, like you mentioned, as far as the advice to the parents and educating them and making people feel inclusive and stuff like that, I feel very inclusive whenever I work with you. And a lot of times, you know, we are giving back to the black community, and there are times where I may be one of the non-black guy there, but I've never felt like, oh, I'm not supposed to be here, or I never felt like I wasn't appreciated. So even though you come from a race where you're a victim of feeling the opposite of all of those things, you choose to never do that. You choose to treat people the way you want to be treated.
Yeah. And
I want to acknowledge you for that, and I want to thank you for that, because working with you and Jimmy and everybody else in Footlocker and the people that I get to meet, this has been an amazing experience for me, and I'm so grateful that I'm able to do something positive like what you guys are doing while growing, you know, Reality Tell Your Vision. Yeah. And I really appreciate you for, you know, trusting me that we can have this conversation and allowing me to ask questions to you, and just overall empowering me, man, all the time, and looking at me as a human being, because, you know what I mean, that's it makes me feel, as a half Japanese, half American guy, you know, I feel as like a human. You acknowledge my cultures too. You acknowledge how awesome the Japanese culture is and what you like about it, and, you know, that, like you said, that really makes me feel good about myself. And as a half Japanese, half American kid, you know, when I was growing up in Japan, I looked up to black culture. You know, I listened to, you know, hip hop music. You know, I used to, you know, watch movies and, you know, watch sports that are predominantly black, and I found so much inspiration within all of that, and I was able to carry that and deal with my issues, you know, when I moved to this country. So people like you, you know, like you said, a leader is not somebody that, you know, is saying this about themselves. Leaders are people, you know, acknowledging them. Let me just acknowledge you for being a
Thank you, man.
leader,
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. And like, I think, like, like you said, like being inclusive and like just treating people like people, it goes such a far way. Cause you know, like until we got like even more cool, I didn't know, you know what I'm saying, about how you felt growing up there than growing up here. You know what I'm saying? I didn't know that. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't like I tailored it because I knew you had some sensitivities. It was just like, oh yeah, cool. What's up, man? How's it going? You know what I'm saying? Acknowledging you just as a cool person, you know, kind of thing. And then like as we're talking through those things, you start to tell me about your culture and those things. And I'm just, you know, acknowledging those differences. I'm not like, oh, like, well, I'm not gonna listen to that or do that because it's different or it's foreign to me. I'm gonna listen to you. Like, okay, sweet, that's dope. You know what I'm saying? Oh, I've seen that before. You know what I'm saying? Like we can acknowledge those differences and it can actually bring us closer together, you know what I'm saying, as opposed to like ignoring them, you know, kind of thing. But yeah, I think like whenever people come around, you know what I'm saying? Like you talked about like how people are so caught up on status and things like that. Like I believe that you have to define what success means to you. You know, so if that manifesting like you getting a car that you always wanted when you were a kid kind of thing, that's cool, but that's like a personal goal for you, you know what I'm saying? Like, but when you're doing it to flex, you know what I'm saying, or to like you said, like make yourself seem like you had a certain status level, you're not really doing that for you, you're doing that for other people, you know, kind of thing. So I think it's acknowledging, you know, what success means to you, what you really want that to be, you know what I'm saying, and then letting that guide you on your goals, because then you won't feel the need to impress others because you're working on yourself, you know what I'm saying, you're building yourself, you know. So yeah, it's really just like being a person and acknowledging others for the people that they are, not what they have.
What does success mean to you?
Really, I know very much that I always want to be in a position to do this, to inspire other people, to impact like my culture. I know that as long as I'm in an area of or a space where I'm able to do that, I'm successful. There's for sure things that I like, physical things I like. I like sneakers, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's, you know, I like cool apartments and lofts, you know what I'm saying? I do like those things too, you know, so those are things that I have a checklist of, like, you know, I'm working toward those things. But as far as like actually being successful, I wouldn't feel successful if I was just working a job and paying my bills, and even if I was making more, you know, like I've declined job offers for more money that weren't in line with, you know, what I wanted to do as a person, or like ultimately in my career kind of thing, you know. Like I actually went to school for like engineering, you know, kind of thing. I would be making a lot more money, you know, but I thought about what I wanted the rest of my life to look like, and I knew that wasn't something I wanted to do. You know, I wanted to be a part of, one, a culture that I enjoy. I like sneakers, I like streetwear, I like art, you know what I'm saying, kind of thing. So I made that a goal to seek that out, you know. So then I was in a space where I felt like if I could do that, instead of like only living this dream on nights and weekends, only being able to engage in the things I like when I'm off of work, you know what I'm saying, then I would be even more happy in my life, you know. And that's what kind of like drove me toward like finding a career like what I have today, and doing the things that I was doing on the side that kind of like got me here. It was like, yo, I'm gonna pursue the things that I really like. When we talked about passion earlier, you know. So I think as long as I'm in a space where I'm working within my passion, I'm successful and I'm happy.
Before I ask the last question, Don.
Yep.
I'm gonna bring this full circle, okay? So when I was growing up in Japan, like I said earlier, you know, I looked up to, you know, sports and music, and that really was the catapult for me to kind of develop my character. And growing up, I had this object kind of hung up on my wall that kind of brought me inspiration. Mm-hmm. But the back of that object was something really, really cool. And when I moved, I kept it because I knew I would give it to somebody that would appreciate it more than me. So you've been probably wondering, why am I holding a folder this whole time? But I brought something for you.
So sweet.
So
do I open it up for the camera?
Yes.
For sure. Got it? All right.
Yeah.
I know what this is. This Big Ben?
Okay, yeah.
Hey.
Uh-huh. But look at the back of it, though.
Oh, word?
So
how do you choose what side? What? The Magic and Jordan?
Jordan Final Focus. So this poster was from Slam magazine, which is an NBA magazine in Japan.
Okay.
Not Slam. It was called oh my God, Hoops magazine, I think it was called.
Okay.
But it was a Japanese magazine, NBA magazine, and this picture was in there. So you're probably never gonna find this poster.
Bro, what? That's crazy.
But I knew one day I'm gonna meet somebody that is more deserving of this than I am, that will appreciate it more than I am. And I just wanted to give this to you to, you know, to show my appreciation. To say, you know, thank you for helping me grow Reality Tell Your Vision, helping me grow me, and just continue to just to be you, man. And this is attached to it. If you open that up, it's just real simple. But basically, it's just the last question, man.
Your famous question.
Yes, sir. What are 3 things you're most grateful for today? And I want you to put that up anywhere just to remind yourself. If you want to send that to somebody, to uplift somebody, do whatever you want with that. But what are 3 things you're most grateful for today, man?
First off, thank you. This is crazy dope. You know how I feel. I collect Slam magazines, so you already know, like...
This isn't Slam.
I know you said it was from something else, but like the basketball magazines, that's always been like super crazy to me. And this is the Pistons that I grew up on, you know, so I see Rasheed Wallace in the background. Like, this is the Pistons I remember actually winning the championship, so very dope. It's going to be hard to pick which side goes like on display kind of thing. 3 things I'm most grateful for right now. Number 1, I'm gonna for sure say my family. All of this is going on right now, but there's also the pandemic, which we're somewhat coming out of, you know. So that's, you know, I'm fortunate that, you know, most of my immediate family is fine and healthy. You know, I've been able to visit them from time to time and spend time with them. And a lot of people have, you know, have lost a lot of loved ones, you know, so I'm really grateful to have those close to me still here and healthy, you know, kind of thing. Second thing, I'm really grateful for just for time, you know, right now it's like being isolated and quarantined, and then, you know, what's happening now with like the George Floyd and the protests in our cities, you know, like being alone, but using that time to like really think about and sit with your emotions, it really helps put perspective into things. You know, we were living in such a busy world, you know, we were just out doing as much as we could all the time, you know, and I'm fortunate to still have been like working from home and things, you know, but really taking the time and the space kind of away from people and events to really think through what's important for me. You know, we talk about what success looks like to you, so working on plans and strategies and just like where I want to be, you know, in my life. I'm really grateful for that time. And third, I would say like, you know, like health, you know, like things are crazy right now, you know, and they've been this way for months, you know, where I think a lot of people were taking just good health for granted, whether that was just physical health, mental health, you know, kind of thing, and just being in a really strong space. Like I said, I still go through my emotions, you know, every day, you know, kind of thing, but being in a space to where I'm able to deal with that, to go through them, experience them, you know, appreciate them, you know, take from it what I can, and continue to stay motivated, you know, and things like that. So definitely my mental and physical health as well. So again, thank you, bro. Like, you don't even know. I got to find a dog-ass frame for these now, because I have to put this somewhere, man.
Somewhere
like,
in here.
Yeah, but thank you, bro, for
No
sure.
problem,
Thank you,
thank
man.
you for sharing your perspective and your wisdom, and thank you to anybody who listened to this, who watched this in the entirety of this. Go positively impact somebody today, please. You know, and it could be the smallest thing. It could be a small gesture. You can give them a small present. You can, you know, just acknowledge them. We can make the same ability we have in finding the difference in one another is the same ability that we have and finding the similarities in one another. So let's start doing that. Let's really, really push this human race forward to the next generation, so that they don't have to deal with some of the crap that we're dealing with. So thank you, Don, and thank you, everybody. And until our next conversation.
Peace.